Welcome to Remote Viewing Collective, where we dive into the untapped power of the mind. Remote viewing is a technique that lets you access information beyond your senses, seeing things, places, and even moments you never physically experienced. Whether you're curious or a skeptic, join us as we explore the mysteries of consciousness and the possibilities within. Are you ready to unlock what's hidden?
All right. Hi, everybody. This is the remote viewing that I did for target number 7681D, 8711X. After getting into a deep meditation, I pulled up this ideogram here. The first wave of words and emotions and physical feelings that I felt were weakness. I felt sick to my stomach, winded, and nausea, and a drugged state. So this could be in response to what was happening, an emotional reaction to what someone was seeing or feeling at the time of this snapshot here. The RV storyboard, the first glimpse that I got was at the top. I saw a man sitting next to some kind of dome, and it looked that he was in an area that it didn't look like he was on Earth. I just guessed, was he in space? It looked like a very dry, deserty area with some very, very low hills and mountains. I took kind of a second probe. I took a break. And on the bottom here, I got a second glimpse with him. And then these little ships started appearing. And so I started drawing them in the sky. And I thought, is this a cargo? Is this travel? It looked like they were hunting. So that was the feeling, was that they were moving in a hunting pattern, looking for something. And then I wrote underneath ships or drones. So I thought, wow, are we looking at the drones that are flying around? Okay. And uh, the man was still at the center of everything. There was something to be uh, probed further, and I looked into his what he was doing. There was some different emotions here, going back, returning, exploring, escape. But this man, he might have had access to an underground bunker. I saw underneath there, a very important. He had access. He had a disgust for what was happening around him. He was a military man and he wanted a new plan. And he was a man that was going to be breaking orders. This kind of craft shape, a high technology, powerful, very dangerous. Um, the man was still there, so I saw him looking up at it, and I saw, it was probing his thoughts, and he knew so much. He knew about everything that was going on, like everything, all of there was some secrecy he knew. His eyes are piercing. He's a warrior. He wants to challenge forces, but it's like he witnessed some murder or assassination, a coup, a retaliation. He really, what he witnessed was really horrific. I was feeling it. It was very strong. Some words coming in, switching. It needed a new face. I don't think he needed it, but there was some kind of organization. In and out tricks, plans for future, keeping track and watching, monitoring, menacing. I think these had to do with the drones. There's an awakening and a powerful moment concerned with these probes. And then there's also some kind of hidden or rejected technology that was being revealed or needs a new face. And that's what I got.
Thanks, Veronica. Great work. Interesting. We'll see how that overlaps with other people.
My initial ideogram and impressions was that this had to do with some type of land. It seemed hard, a man-made surface, but I was immediately seeing energetics up in the sky, structures interacting with each other up in the sky. So I did a deduction for space war. The terrain or the base surface seemed like a rough terrain, rocky, hilly, but there were some flat areas as well. I was hearing at various times horns and sirens going off. Again, the terrain was the hard, bumpy, dry terrain that was actually smooth in some areas, but it seemed kind of dry and desolate, cold. Um, the landscape was that hilly and rocky landscape. The size of it seemed big, but there were some structures involved, whether those were object structures or structure objects, those were involved as well. The space of it seemed to be outside on a surface, but the surfaces were off Earth and on Earth surfaces, and there was a lot of interaction within space. So I was getting space and land structures, tangible objects that were hard and metallic and man-made. They were grayish, black, some were white, but they were big objects and they moved in the air and spun around. They were triangular and circular. I was seeing some hilly areas that had some kind of energetic communication devices on top of them that were communicating up off of the surface up into space. There's a picture there of just this grayish, rocky, bumpy surface that I was seeing. And I was also seeing fight over resources on the world. So that's a barrel of oil, and that's what I get when there's something going on that has to do with a fight over resources. Initially, one of my first pictures were a moving object on that gray rocky surface, and there was just dirt and dust and wind, just blowing everything around. But it was I did a deduction for military because there seemed to be some type of military operations going on involving this target, as well as energy devices and some type of space war or something going up or going on in space involving our military. I was seeing these interlocking gears of something mechanical that was mechanized and had interlocking gears running with it. On the next page again, later on in the RV, I was seeing virtual reality headset goggles and a biological wearing those, interacting with objects in space. There was a large planet-sized gray object that was rocky and had a rough terrain, and I did a deduction for the moon for that. And then I was seeing a black and red type of triangular structure that at first was like a patch. And that's what I get when there's some type of interaction with energies that are stereotypically portrayed as not looking after the best interests of humanity. And so that's the insignia that I get when it's being presented that there's some type of negative influence involved with a particular target. Now, there also, I was getting pictures of some type of underground area where something goes in and hides in that entrance underground. I was also seeing triangular objects up in the sky that were large. They're operating in space or up in the sky above Earth. Some of them were black, some of them were white. And that color dynamics comes to me when um, it's either uh, in some instances the objects were actually white and black, and in other instances the that's just portraying the intent or stereotypical intent of the parties operating the objects as far as whether they're white hats, black hats, or that type of thing. So overall, it seemed like this target was relating to something having to do with our military, space wars or space flights, or space fights that were off planet, involving spinning objects that are actually moving. But there's some kind of connection between a gray, hard, rocky surface with a rough terrain interacting with the objects that were also up in the space. And it seemed like everything was a game or planned out or just played out for everyone to see as if it was a game of some sort. It's a beautiful target. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Latanya. Great work and with a lot of overlapping data.
And in that square on the left, before the meditation was complete, I got a vision of a desert type area with like hills and then something flying around. So I wrote that before I started just to see if it meant anything after. The first ideogram were these two long structures, which for me are like buildings or a facility or something. So that's the first thing I saw. It was clear. The pictures were clear. I was at a location that was quiet. It felt cold. The smell was clean because it was inside the building, although the building was outside in a deserted area. The emotional temp for me was high because I felt nervous and curious. Outside where the buildings were was very dry, desert, and the buildings had access to something underground. Although I didn't probe into the underground area, I knew that there was access to the underground at the facility. The size was big, it was a structure, and I saw mainly males there, biological males. Any written words that I saw weren't really words, they were more like symbols. So I saw a star with some lines coming out of it, and I felt that it was military in nature, and I felt that it was us. I recognized that it might be one of the armed forces. I'm not sure which one, but it's a star with lines coming out. But then I also saw something that looked like technology or a microchip, which is that little square on top. And for me, that means that like we are working with something more advanced or someone more advanced. I just started to draw, and again, I put the target on the left. The temperature was warm for me, was high. I wrote under location that it was the USA. It has to do with the United States. It was a dry place with a structure. And then I started to see like roads, big roads in different angles, kind of like an airport or runways. So I wrote that down. And then when I probed it a little more, I felt it was government. I felt maybe a base, some kind of big facility with roads and these things flying around up top. I did see something that looked like a hangar, which is those little art designs in the middle of the page with that same emblem in the middle of the hangars. I drew them all again at the bottom, the structures, the hills, the emblem of the star with the lines, and the technology or what represents something more advanced. And then on the last page, I just wanted to see what it looked like all together. And to me, it looked like a base. So I see the hills in the back of the desert area, desolate. I see the things flying around in the air. And I did get the sense that it might have been drones. I didn't write drones, but it felt like drones or something smaller than, what we're used to for big ships or ETs. It felt more like smaller flying objects controlled by, or at least working with us. And those intersecting lines are like the runways. The hangar is on the left at the bottom with the emblem. And then just a few words came, like many men, official people, anxious, prepping for something, waiting, and that I felt something was coming. And again, I got the microchip of the technology. So it's either the things are very high tech, or we're working with something that is high tech with these things that are flying around. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Anastasia. Great work. Here's your session. Adrian, tell me what you got here.
Um, so this was my first ideogram and look at initial impressions for this target. I was getting smoke, energetic cycles, and something shooting out. My second impression was getting a circular motion, movement, and then a shooting, also propelling outward. Right here is something that is the symbol for the Artemis program, obviously. But behind it, I feel like it was symbolic coming through, leading me to that this is related to the target. So the A, when I wrote subject A behind it, I kept writing A, a circled A. Below that's the word axis. But this A I found is almost the exact symbol that I drew that represents the Artemis program.
So I want to just take this time to say that repeatedly, so just the motives group weren't the only ones tasked with this target. And repeatedly, in a shape like that, an A shape, they thought it were hills or pyramids with a sun rising behind it. That symbol came up over and over and over again in almost all the viewings. So
Revisiting the first data set, I went back and probed the first ideogram, and then I got a biological male, and I heard him speaking. What he said was one more time. I wasn't sure what he meant by that. I was also getting an impression that that biological male felt trapped. I was getting images of prison and metaphors of being in jail. So I got the sense that he was trapped. And then I heard that being say, keep me alive. So here I was sensing that that biological was trying to escape. I was sensing movement to around this underground location. And then I was getting this impression of traveling. And I drew this triangle shape, which then shot out from this underground location to off planet. Triangle shaped craft takes off from this underground location and it goes to the southernmost part of the moon, which is interesting because when I did some research, China has been visiting this area at the South Pole on the dark side for all year, been better more than 10 times to this location. China's planning on a lunar base and cities and structures all over the moon. Second time I got a triangle craft was on the surface here. This potentially a base, but I found this image in the news of a yellow satellite, a Chinese yellow technology, some kind of device that had a radar. And I was hearing here when I'm drawing those lines, I'm hearing like a doot doot, like a radar signal coming out of this structure that I drew as yellow. And then so I found this, that seemed to like a hit. And then I was getting the impression that this was a Chinese piece of equipment, basically. Whatever this was, it was structure or equipment was Chinese. And the craft that was there also.
So in summary to this target, we had over a dozen viewers looking at this target. This has to be the most popular subject of these last few weeks. Everybody is talking about drones all over social media and the internet. This is a popular remote viewing target. So hopefully we can add some of our data to what you can learn elsewhere and it'll make more sense. But we're mostly concerned with overlapping details in several viewers or from separate viewings. What we got for overlap was U.S. military influence, seemingly with one key figure that was motivated for a change or reacting to a situation he was put in. This was key in a few separate viewings. We had the same environment. We had a desert base, we had domes. Several viewers described a gray land, and then the moon came up. But we had a desert military base involved. The target was whose drones are they? And what are these drones over New Jersey? They were described as triangular and highly advanced, as well as spherical drones. They were both above the Earth and above the target area. So orbital activity and orbital conflict between drones. So seemingly more than one player. And this would marry up with a lot of other testimonies and theories about the drones, that there are more than one entity behind them. The moon was involved in as many as 5 separate viewings and activity on the moon, or base or future bases on the moon. And when we looked into research and development of the symbol, the Artemis symbol, or the symbol that was close to that, came up over and over again, was probably the most repeated element of the viewings for all of the viewers. It was the most common element. And when I look into that, New Jersey is a hub. The state of New Jersey is a hub for a lot of the research and development of the Artemis program. The Air Force symbol was clearly stated. How significant that is, I don't know. And the China element, also the similarity between the Artemis symbol, which has the Earth or moon, whatever behind it, and the Chinese astronaut symbol is very significant in this case. I think this really draws a line, and this is a piece of evidence that I really feel is pinnacle. The other thing is that we see this activity, or the situation around this activity, increasing over the next year. That was a very common theme through all the viewings as well. That's it. So thanks for tuning in to Remote Viewing Collective. If we can connect a few dots with this. Not a slam dunk, but one of the bigger targets out there right now. So hope this helps. See you guys soon.